I remember that morning vividly, a chilly, early December morning in Portland. It was overcast, the wind howling through the cracks in the windows so cold that I had to wrap 3 layers of wool around my neck, but my hands were still shaking. I shuffled slowly into the small clinic on Fremont Street, where I had gone for my annual checkups. But this time it was different. I had a vague feeling that something was wrong. Dr. Rowan, a gentle man with neatly combed brown hair and a constant smile, met me in a bright white room. He was 20 years younger than me, but when he spoke to me, I always felt respected as a mother. He put the test results down on the table, looked up at me, his eyes more thoughtful than usual. Margaritis. He began, his voice slow but firm. The results show that your liver has an unusually high level of fat accumulation. I suspect you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I was stunned. Fatty liver, I repeated, almost not believing my ears. I was not the type of person who drank a lot and had never even liked beer or wine. I didn't eat too much either. I remember blurting out to the doctor, "But I don't drink alcohol, nor do I eat much fat." How could this happen? The doctor just shook his head silently and said, "It's not just alcohol that damages the liver. Eating habits, exercise, and age also have a big impact." At that moment, I sat still in that examination room for a long time, a vague fear rising in my heart. Not fear of illness, but fear of old age and illness suddenly and without warning. That night, I sat in the living room holding a cup of hot tea, looking out the window. The wind was still blowing cold and gloomy like my mood at that time. I began to think about my life, how I had lived too simply, too indulgently for so many years. Breakfast was usually a few slices of white bread with a dollop of sweet strawberry jam. Lunch was whatever was available. Sandwiches from the local store. French fries, sometimes fried chicken. Dinner, if not cold cuts, was something quick and convenient, followed by a long, tiring nap in bed watching TV. I thought of Helen, my best friend from church, who used to smile brightly every Sunday morning, now using a cane and suffering from cirrhosis. Or Mr. Davis, who used to be a Bible presenter, now hospitalized for fatty liver disease. I didn't want to go down that path. I was afraid of living in a state of illness, dependent on medication, and having to sigh every day in a white hospital. I decided to change. No medication, no prescriptions, filled with words I didn't understand. I wanted to start with the simplest, most natural, safest, and gentlest things. I turned to books, listened to podcasts, consulted a nutritionist, and gradually gathered valuable knowledge about liver-friendly foods. And so my liver recovery journey, the journey that I believe saved my old age, began with something seemingly mundane: a bowl of hot oatmeal, sprinkled with walnuts and a few slices of ripe banana. That was it. But for me, it was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter of hope, of awareness, and of true self-care. Part 2. New breakfast and old habits. Oats and Mrs. Helen. I still remember that morning clearly. The day I officially said goodbye to the white bread, covered with strawberry jam, and the strong black coffee, which had been my habit for decades. Instead, I stood in my familiar small kitchen, stirring a steaming pot of oatmeal. I cooked it with unsweetened almond milk, something I never thought I would touch before. Then I gently sprinkled on some lightly roasted walnuts, which I bought the day before at the Gresham Farmers Market, where there were kind old farmers and stalls full of fresh vegetables. That bowl of oatmeal was not too fussy. The light sweetness from the almond milk, the faint aroma of the well-cooked oats, combined with the rich flavor of the walnuts, surprised me. Not at all boring, but surprisingly light and warm. While eating, I thought about what Dr. Rowan had told me. Beta-glucan in oats is not only good for the heart, but also helps reduce fat in the liver, helping the liver function more effectively. The more I ate, the more relieved I felt. Not just physically, but also as if I was truly taking care of my body after years of neglect. That afternoon, I called Helen, my longtime friend who used to be a choir mate in the church choir. Her voice was still steady and slow as usual, but I could clearly hear the tiredness hidden in every word. When I told her about my bowl of oatmeal, she chuckled softly and sighed. "Margaret, I can't remember the last time I had a proper breakfast. Since John passed away, I've been living a sloppy life, dry biscuits in the morning, cold coffee, just to get through the day. Hearing her say that, my heart ached. Helen used to be a cheerful woman, often wearing floral dresses and always carrying a box of peppermints in her handbag. But since her husband passed away, it seemed that all the light had gone with him. I immediately took a box of oatmeal from the cupboard, carefully wrapped it with a small bag of walnuts, and brought it to her house the next day. I said, "Let's start over, Helen. We're not young anymore, but as long as we breathe, there's hope. Every decent breakfast is a chance for us to live better." 2 weeks later, my home phone rang early in the morning while I was boiling water for tea. It was Helen. Her voice was strange, no longer tired or heavy like before, but gentle with a hint of joy in her voice. "Margaret, I've slept much better these past few nights. No more bloating, no more searching for stomach medicine in the middle of the night. Yesterday, when I went to the doctor, he said my liver was showing signs of improvement. I was so happy I cried. From that day on, we had a little arrangement. Every Sunday morning she would come to my house, wearing a floral apron, and I would prepare the oatmeal and the tea. We would eat breakfast together in the kitchen, talking, laughing, and sharing stories. I called those mornings liver healing brunch, not only because the food was healthy, but because it was a time when we both felt cared for, loved not just by others, but by ourselves. Part 3. The Green Teapot and the Old Soldier. There is one character that I will always remember. Mr. Frank, a former Marine in his 80s, thin, but with the strong eyes of a man who has crossed mountains and forests, gone through life and death. He lives alone in a small wooden house, nestled in the pine forest of Hood River, where every winter morning frost covers every window. The house is not special except for the smell of dry pine, and the old AM radio always played at a low volume. But it is strangely cozy. I met him at a meeting of the Veterans Association at the local community centre. That afternoon, there was a light rain, the wind blowing through the hallway, making the flyers on the reception desk flutter. In a corner of the room, I saw Mr. Frank carefully pouring coffee from a steel thermos. A strong black coffee, no sugar, no cream, what he calls the only energy drink I can trust after the military. When I walked over to greet him, he smiled, shook my hand, and said in a hoarse but warm voice, "Just one cup like this can keep me awake until midnight." We chatted for a while, and then I told him about my liver recovery journey. I shared that for the past 6 months I had completely given up my morning coffee, something I used to be indispensable for, and switched to drinking green tea. At first I simply thought that green tea cleansed my body, but after doing some research, I learned that green tea contains catechins, a powerful antioxidant that can help the liver eliminate excess fat, reduce inflammation, and naturally enhance liver function. Mr. Frank listened attentively, his eyes no longer stopping at the coffee cup, but starting to look at the teapot I had brought. Something changed in him, not because of any persuasion, but because he recognized something familiar in my story. The lingering fatigue after every meal, the heaviness when waking up, the unexplained sleepless nights. A few days later, he called me, a rare gesture since he was not fond of the telephone. "Margaret, I want to try green tea," he said briefly but firmly. I packed some of the best Tyne green tea, the kind I usually used, along with a small earthenware teapot, and sent it to his house by post. A month later, I saw him again at a memorial service for my old comrades at the military cemetery. The sky was clear and the sun was mild. Frank walked toward me wearing a thick coat and an old woolen cap. In his hand was no longer a rusty steel coffee pot, but a new moss-green thermos. He smiled, squinted his eyes, patted me on the shoulder, and said, "I still miss bourbon, Margaret. But now green tea is my new friend. I no longer feel exhausted after dinner. I sleep better. Thanks." I didn't say much, just nodded, but I felt strangely warm inside. Amidst stories of war, illness, and old age, a simple pot of green tea can bring a little peace, a little hope. Not every change has to be big. Sometimes just replacing a cup of coffee with a cup of tea, you have started the journey to healthy living gently and confidently. Part 4. Avocado and my granddaughter. Let me tell you about Sarah, my proud granddaughter. She is the daughter of my eldest daughter, who is now a well-known nutritionist in Santa Clara, California. Sarah is young, in her early 30s, but the way she talks about food and the body makes me feel like I am listening to a specialist. Every time she comes to visit, I learn something new and interesting, not complicated theories, but sincere, practical, simple sharing like the way she grew up in my family. That time, Sarah came to visit on a cool weekend, the sunlight gently shining on the porch. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch. On the table was a plate of sprout salad that I had just washed next to a ripe avocado, soft, fatty, but not mushy. I spooned thin slices onto the salad, drizzled with olive oil and apple cider vinegar. As Sarah walked into the kitchen, she stopped, laughed, and exclaimed, "Grandma, you're ahead of your time. You're making the exact dish that every girl in town is posting on Instagram." I laughed too, not because I felt trendy, but because I was happy to know I was on the right track. I told her I read in a study that avocados contain monounsaturated fats, the type of fat that's good for the liver. Not only does it help lower bad LDL cholesterol, but it also helps the liver detoxify effectively. I thought if a natural fruit can help keep your liver healthy without medication, why not try it? Sarah nodded, her eyes sparkling with joy and pride. She didn't lecture like other young people, but said softly, "You're right. The liver needs good fats to function properly. And avocados are one of the best foods. They're nutritious and easy to incorporate into many dishes." Before leaving Portland for Santa Clara, Sarah left me a small but meaningful gift, a cookbook specializing in dishes with avocados. The cover of the book featured a picture of an avocado cut in half, revealing its smooth golden flesh with the words, "Avocado for life." From that day on, I began my journey of discovering new dishes from this seemingly simple fruit. Every week I picked a recipe from the book and painstakingly prepared it in my small kitchen. Some days it was Mexican-style avocado mixed with black beans, sprinkled with a little cumin and a little spicy chili powder. Some days it was a refreshing green smoothie, blending avocado with spinach, a few green apples, and a little lemon juice. On weekends, I make grilled salmon with lemon butter sauce, fragrant and fatty, but light on the stomach. Not as heavy as the old meals with red meat and rich cream sauce. Each dish I try is a gentle reminder that liver care does not have to be strict or boring. As long as we choose the right ingredients, listen to our bodies, and take a little time to pamper ourselves, health will find its way back. Avocado, small, simple, has become a constant companion on my journey to healthy living. And it was Sarah, with the heart of a grandchild, who helped me open the door to a new way of life, one that is not only healthy, but also inspiring. Part 5. A friend from Texas and a bottle of olive oil. Among my longtime friends, there is one I always keep in touch with, Joanne. She is a widow who lives in El Paso, Texas, where the sun almost never sets, and the desert winds blowing through the backyard seem to carry memories of her youth. Joanne used to be an elementary school teacher with a soft voice and a gentle smile. But since her husband Harry passed away, she has been living quietly alone in her old house, with only her little dog named Toby as company. We still call each other often, especially on weekend afternoons. During a recent conversation, her voice was a little tired. "Margaret, I don't know what to eat to stay healthy. I hear everything is toxic. Everything is harmful. Every time I eat, I feel full, have trouble sleeping. And then my old liver rebels." I knew she was confused, as I was in the sea of information about good and bad foods. It was sometimes hard to know where to start. I remembered the bottle of extra virgin olive oil I had just purchased from an organic farm in Sonoma, California. It was a light golden green oil in a dark glass bottle with a hand-labeled label. I immediately packed a bottle and mailed it to Texas, along with a little note I had written in my hand. "Dear Joanne, try this instead of butter. Ditch the lard, drizzle it on salads, or use it to lightly saute vegetables, and your liver will be happy. Trust me." Joanne had always been wary of all greases. She grew up in a southern household where every good meal was accompanied by butter, lard, or deep-fried oil. "Cholesterol is a death sentence I try to avoid every day," she would say. But I gently explained over the phone. "Olive oil is not animal fat, Joanne. It is monounsaturated fat, the kind your body needs to reduce inflammation, lower bad cholesterol, and help your liver function more effectively. It does not harm your liver, but it helps it detoxify more gently, as long as you use it in moderation and correctly. Joanne paused for a moment, then said in a hopeful voice, "Margaret, I believe in you. You always try it first before you tell others to do it." And so she began her journey of change, not with a bunch of pills, but with a simple but quality bottle of olive oil. 6 weeks later, one fine morning, my phone rang. It was Joanne again. But this time her voice rang out so loudly and so energetically that I almost didn't recognize it. "This old liver feels so much better, Margaret. No more aching after dinner. I sleep better. My stomach feels lighter. And you know what? I've even lost a few pounds without any hard dieting." I smiled. Not because I was happy with the result, but because I knew, for every friend like Joanne, what they need is not just health advice, but a little sincere encouragement, a little sharing from real experience. And sometimes a bottle of olive oil, if sent with all your heart, can become a small ray of light that opens the big path to health joy and initiative in old age. Part 6. Sardines. A woman named Linda and dinner in Seattle. I used to hate sardines. The fishy smell, the bones and the canned stuff. To me, it was a food for people who have no other choice. But now, if anyone asks me to name a dish that is both simple and effective in helping the liver recover, I will immediately mention sardines. All thanks to a friend, Linda, who changed my perspective with just one simple but surprising dinner in Seattle. I first met Linda in a yoga therapy class at a senior center near the harbor. She is a tall, slender Italian woman with grey hair tied back in a bun and bright eyes, always exuding intelligence and calmness. Even though she's in her 70s, she still moves through yoga poses as gracefully as a retired dancer. We often chat after class, sharing healthy eating tips and old stories from our teenage years. On a rainy fall afternoon, Linda invited me to her Queen Anne home, an old house with a wooden porch and a lush herb garden. Her kitchen was filled with the aromas of basil roasted garlic and a hint of lemon. At the dining table, I watched her open a can of sardines, imported from Portugal, served in a small tin with a golden coating of olive oil and a few slices of red pepper. She placed each fish on a slice of whole wheat bread, topped with a few slices of juicy tomato, a sprinkling of parsley, and a few grains of grey sea salt. "Margaret, this is great for your liver. I read in AARP that sardines are rich in omega-3s and vitamin D, which help reduce inflammation and boost liver function," she said, with the conviction of someone who has tried it and believes in the results. I was still a little hesitant, but then she smiled and handed me a slice. "Try it, you'll be surprised." And I was surprised. There was no fishy smell as I expected. The light, fatty taste of the fish, combined with the crunchiness of the bread, the sweet and sour taste of the tomatoes, and the fresh aroma of the coriander, made this simple dish incredibly delicious. When I got home, I decided to give it a try. I picked good sardines, washed them briefly if necessary, squeezed some lemon juice, sprinkled some dill and black pepper. I ate them twice a week, sometimes with brown rice, sometimes with toast, sometimes mixed into a salad. 3 months later, I went for a routine checkup at Dr. Rowan's office. I still remember the moment he looked up from his liver enzyme test results, his eyes lighting up. "Margaret, your liver enzymes have dropped significantly. Your liver is responding very well to your current diet. Keep it up," he said with a smile that I rarely saw on him, the smile of a doctor seeing real progress in his patient. I walked out of the clinic that day feeling relieved, not because of any miracle cure, but because I understood health is not far away, but in the choices we make in each meal. And sometimes what we used to avoid, like a can of sardines, can become a valuable companion on the road to recovery. Thanks to Linda, I not only learned to love sardines, but also learned to open up to things I used to reject, and realized that change can sometimes be found in the smallest things. Part 7. Almonds, Snacks, and Mr. Davis's story. When I was treasurer at First Baptist Church, every Sunday morning began with the church bell ringing, the sound of children playing in the yard, and the familiar image of Mr. Davis, tall and thin, with neatly cropped grey hair, always wearing an old ash-grey wool coat, with pockets always bulging with small snack bags. He was a quiet man, but always punctual and diligent, never missing a prayer meeting. I admired him for his neatness and carefulness, although sometimes stubborn and not very concerned about healthy eating. One morning in early winter, as I was putting together my collection for the collection, Mr. Davis walked in, pulling a bag of salted fried peanuts from his pocket. He sat down next to me, opened the bag of snacks. The rustling of paper echoed in the quiet room. I saw the white salt coating the beans, smiled and pulled a small box of unsalted almonds from my bag, something I carried every week as a healthy snack instead of cookies or candy. I handed the box to him, saying gently, "Try these, Davis. Not salty, not fried, but rich in vitamin E, which helps the liver function better and is also good for the heart." He took it hesitantly, frowning at the smooth, small almonds. He tasted one and chewed it slowly. He grimaced a little. "Not as good as a snack, but—" "Okay," he said. Reluctant, but not dismissive. I didn't rush to convince him. I believe in the power of habit when planted at the right time with the right person. Over the next few weeks, I noticed that the snack bag in his shirt pocket was disappearing. In its place was a small, zip-top bag of almonds, also unsalted, unflavored. At first just a few, then a handful. One Jenny came up to me and asked Margaret, "Where do you buy almonds? I found a few in the supermarket, but none of them are as good as yours." I gave him the name of a small organic food store near our house, and from then on, Mr. Davis prepared his own healthy snack every Sunday morning. Gradually, I saw a change in him. Not dramatic, not magical, but a gentle, natural transformation, like the morning light filtering through the church windows. His face was less pale, his voice was more even, and he no longer had the dry cough that lingered after each meeting. He told me in a conversation after Mass that he had been sleeping better lately, waking up less often in the middle of the night, and no longer felt as full and uncomfortable after dinner as before. At his most recent checkup, his doctor told him that his liver and blood pressure had both improved. No longer alarming numbers, but positive signs for a man who has turned 78. I was secretly happy. Not because I fed Mr. Davis almonds, but because I saw him starting to care about his body. For older people, the hardest thing is not a lack of knowledge, but changing habits that have been ingrained throughout life. And just one small step, like replacing a bag of salty chips with a handful of plain almonds, is enough to open a new path to health, alertness, and even joy in life. Part 8. Walnuts, a snack for diabetes. My niece-in-law, Emily, is a meticulous and thoughtful woman. She works in accounting in Eugene, Oregon, lives a busy life, but never forgets to take care of her family. Emily is the wife of my husband's second grandson, and in my eyes, she is both modern and has a very gentle and emotional soul. I still remember the first time Emily shared with me that she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. She was only 45 years old at that time, the age when people have just stabilized everything, and then the disease comes knocking on the door. I clearly saw in her eyes the hidden worry, not only for herself, but also for her husband and children. She said that every time she came to visit me, she was often confused about what was safe to eat and what to avoid, especially when she was always offered all kinds of cakes and sweets at family gatherings. So the next time I knew she was coming to my house for the weekend, I prepared a bag of premium walnuts, bought from a farmer's market in the suburbs of Portland. I wrapped them in a recycled paper bag, tied a small fabric bow, and attached a handwritten note in brown ink. For Emily, walnuts are rich in omega-3. Help reduce inflammation, support good liver function, and are great for people with diabetes. Eat a little every day. Delicious, nutritious, and healthy. She accepted the gift, her eyes shining like a child given a new toy. I added instructions. You can eat it with Greek yogurt. Add some berries. Good for the liver. Good for the heart. And still keep your blood sugar stable. Emily tried it that day. For an afternoon snack, instead of cookies or soft drinks, she mixed a jar of plain Greek yogurt, added a handful of crunchy walnuts, a few dark red raspberries, and a tiny spoonful of chia seeds. I sat next to her quietly observing. She ate slowly, leisurely, closing her eyes to enjoy the taste as if it were her favorite dessert. Then she smiled and said to me, "It's really delicious, Grandma." The nutty flavor of the walnuts, combined with the slight sourness of the raspberries, plus the cool, smooth yogurt. You can eat it forever without getting bored, and your stomach feels much lighter. From then on, Emily officially became the walnut ambassador in the family. Every time she came to visit, she not only prepared a large jar of unsalted roasted walnuts, but also gave me a small jar of wild honey to eat with them on cold days. She said that since adding walnuts to her daily diet, just a few nuts eaten in the morning or afternoon, her blood sugar has been much more stable, no longer fluctuating as before. Her liver also improved. No longer tired, no longer feeling heavy after meals. She went for a regular checkup. The doctor not only noted that her liver index had reduced inflammation, but also advised her to maintain this valuable snacking habit. More importantly, Emily said, was the feeling of being proactive with her body, not being forced by a diet, but as natural as drinking water every day. Listening to her, I was both moved and proud. There are changes that do not require medication, a gym or a digital blood glucose meter. Sometimes just a small bag of walnuts and a sincere message is enough to open a new door to health, peace, and even family. Part 9. Tofu. The story of a vegan couple in Colorado. I used to be someone who was not very interested in tofu. In my memory, tofu was a soft, pale thing with no taste other than raw bean, both boring and boring to eat. But all that changed when I met Mr. and Mrs. Moore, the couple who lived in the wooden house on the other side of the hill, just a few steps away from my house. Mr. and Mrs. Moore are both in their 60s this year, but they are always radiant and healthy, as if old age had never knocked on their door. They are lifelong vegetarians, not just following a trend, but maintaining it for more than 2 decades. Every morning I often see them walking around the small lake near their house, holding hands, walking and chatting like a newlywed couple. They lived simply gently, and there seemed to be a peaceful energy that radiated from their way of life. One time they invited me over for dinner. I didn't expect much. I thought it would be a salad or some bland steamed vegetable dish. But when I walked into their cozy kitchen in the cold Colorado region, I was surprised to see Mr. Moore standing over the stove, his shirt sleeves rolled up, turning each piece of tofu that had been marinated in tamari soy sauce, minced fresh ginger, and a few crushed garlic cloves. The aroma filled the house, not inferior to the grilled meat I had eaten on big holidays. As I sat down at the table, I took my first bite. The outside was slightly crispy. The inside was soft and smooth, with a strong, salty sweet taste of soy sauce and a hint of spicy warmth from the ginger. I looked at Mr. and Mrs. Moore, unable to hide my surprise. Oh my gosh. I didn't think tofu could be this good. I thought this stuff was as bland as water. Mrs. Moore smiled kindly, poured more hot tea into my cup, and said, "Tofu is not bland if you know how to make it. It is low in fat, has no cholesterol, and contains a large amount of vegetable protein and isoflavones, which help the liver to clean excess fat and reduce inflammation effectively. For the elderly, it is a smart choice to nourish the liver." That night, I left with not only a full stomach, but also an excited mind. The next day, I went to the organic food store near my house, bought a package of fresh tofu, some ginger and low-sodium soy sauce. I started experimenting in the kitchen. At first, clumsily, the seasoning was off flavor, but gradually I found my own recipe. One day I made miso soup with silken tofu, dried seaweed, and green onions. Another day, I stir-fried tofu with broccoli carrots, sprinkled with roasted sesame, and a few drops of fragrant sesame oil. And so tofu gradually became my new friend in the kitchen. At least once a week I make a dish with beans, a gentle reminder that health doesn't come from big things, but from small changes in each family meal. After a few weeks of maintaining that habit, I began to feel the difference. My body felt lighter, no longer feeling heavy or bloated after dinner. I slept soundly, no longer waking up in the middle of the night because of stomach pain or acid reflux. The last time I had a health check, Dr. Rowan looked at the results and said with a smile, "Margaret, your liver is very grateful to you." I just smiled slightly, saying nothing more. But in my heart, I knew. Mr. and Mrs. Moore had not only given me a new dish, but also planted in me a good habit, a belief that no matter what age, we can still change to live better. starting with a small, simple but nutritious piece of bean. Part 10. Broccoli, a health conference in Sacramento. There are trips that seem insignificant, but they change the way you live. For me, it was a long-distance bus ride to Sacramento on a late fall morning, where I attended a health conference for seniors. The weather was cool, with gentle sunlight filtering through the trees that were shedding their brilliant yellow leaves. I brought a notebook, a blue ballpoint pen, and a mood that was both curious and excited. The conference was held at a community center in the south of the city, crowded with grey-haired men and women, colorful scarves, and the sound of laughter everywhere. During a discussion on nutrition, a nutritionist, Dr. Langford, stepped up to the podium with a large board printed with a picture of a broccoli. She took the microphone and spoke very slowly, as if she wanted each word to sink into our heads. If everyone over the age of 60 eats broccoli at least 3 times a week, the rate of fatty liver disease can be significantly reduced. The sulforaphane in this vegetable helps the liver eliminate toxins, reduce fat accumulation, and protect liver cells. I immediately wrote down the sentence in large, bold letters. I had heard of broccoli, a green vegetable that my kids don't like, but had never thought of it as a liver medicine. When I returned to Portland, the first thing I did was go to the supermarket and buy a big bag of fresh, dewy, organic broccoli in a bag. I started simple. I steamed the broccoli until just cooked, then drizzled it with extra virgin olive oil, sprinkled with some minced garlic and a few grains of grey sea salt. The dish retained the light sweetness of the vegetable, the light fat of the olive oil, and the mellow aroma of the garlic. I eat this dish for lunch or dinner with brown rice and lightly stir-fried tofu. It feels just full enough, not full, not tired after eating like before. Not long after that, I told the story of broccoli to Mr. Patrick, a close friend in the health club. Mr. Patrick is 72 years old this year. Had grade 2 fatty liver. The doctor advised him to take medicine, but he was afraid of the side effects, so he was always sad not knowing what to do. I told him, Patrick, start with the simplest thing. Eat broccoli 3 times a week. No need to do anything fancy. Keep at it for a while, your body will tell you how grateful it is. He listened, at first just because he believed me, then more confident because he felt healthier. Every Monday morning he brought his lunchbox to the health class, opened it, and saw broccoli stir-fried with ginger or mixed with black sesame prepared by himself. 6 months later, he went back for a checkup, and his liver index had almost returned to normal. The doctor looked at the results and asked in surprise, "What medicine did you take?" He just smiled and calmly replied, "No medicine. I took broccoli." I told that story with indescribable joy. Not because broccoli is a miracle vegetable, but because I realized that each of us, when we get older, does not necessarily have to live with illness. We can choose green vegetables instead of fatty meat. Choose to listen to our bodies instead of ignoring them. And most importantly, choose to love ourselves every day, starting with the smallest things. For me, broccoli is no longer a tasteless vegetable that children push off the plate. It is a symbol of hope of recovery, and part of the journey to preserve my liver, the silent but most important friend in my body. Part 11. Spinach. Pregnant women and a healthy liver. My niece, Jessica, is a modern, agile, and intelligent girl. She lives in San Jose, works in the field of interior design, and is always busy with projects, clients, and colorful drawings. When Jessica announced that she was pregnant with our first child, our whole family was overwhelmed with joy. But then the first weeks of her pregnancy were not easy. I remember the day Jessica called. Her voice was as small as a kitten. "Grandma, I feel so tired all the time. I don't want to eat anything." I went to the doctor and he said I have mild anemia, and my liver also has signs of increased enzymes. I'm so worried. I felt heartbroken when I heard that. I know that when pregnant, the liver has to work harder to process hormones and filter waste for both mother and fetus. For people with anemia and irregular eating, the liver has to work twice as hard. I can't fly to her, but I can still send a small gift knowledge from my life experience. I wrote Jessica an email, not long, just a few lines. "Spinach, my child. It's one of the best vegetables for the liver and blood. Rich in betaine, helps the liver detoxify vitamin K, supports blood clotting and iron, effectively fights anemia. Easy to make, easy to drink. I use it every week. She responded the next day, saying she would try it. And she did. Every morning, Jessica woke up early, put a handful of fresh spinach in the blender with a ripe banana, a spoonful of chia seeds soaked overnight, and added a little coconut water. In just a few minutes, she had a cool, light green smoothie, fragrant, not greasy at all. At first, she drank it because she believed her grandmother. But then she began to see the difference. In less than a month, Jessica said she was no longer tired all the time. Her mind was more alert, her skin was brighter, no longer pale like before. She sent me a photo, a bright smile holding a smoothie, her belly clearly protruding. I was moved to tears, not because of a miracle smoothie, but because I knew my niece was learning how to take care of herself and her little one with the healthiest things. 3 months later, Jessica gave birth to her first baby girl, healthy, heavy, rosy, and alert. I heard the news over the phone. My eyes still filled with tears when the doctor announced that Jessica's liver index was completely normal, with no signs of increased liver enzymes. Her body recovered faster than expected, partly thanks to her moderate diet throughout her pregnancy. When I visited her and her baby after giving birth, Jessica made me a spinach smoothie, the same recipe I suggested years ago. The little girl said, "Grandma, I still drink it every morning, not only because it is good for my liver, but also because it makes me feel close to you. Every sip is like a reminder that health always starts with the simplest things." I lifted the smoothie, looking at the early morning light, shining through that gentle turquoise color. My heart felt light. I call it the magic smoothie, not because it is a miracle, but because it connects 3 generations, me, my children, and my newly born great-grandchild, with something simple, natural, but full of love. Part 12. Blueberries, the sweet gift of life. If there is one small thing I would like to send to anyone looking for a healthy start, it is blueberries. These tiny, deep purple berries, no bigger than the tip of a finger, contain a treasure trove of nutrients and sweet memories. I planted a few blueberry bushes in my backyard, in the ground next to the wooden fence where the sun shines every morning and the smell of freshly cut grass. At first I just wanted to try it for fun, but unexpectedly the plants thrived, and every season they were heavy with fruit, each cluster sparkling like natural gems. I usually picked them early when the dew was still on the leaves. My palms were cold and smelled of fresh earth. Blueberries are my favorite. I eat them raw, rinse them under cool water, and then drop them into my mouth. The sweet and slightly sour taste awakens all my senses. Some days I mix them with Greek yogurt, sprinkle some flax seeds and almonds. Some days I use blueberries as a filling for baked oatmeal. The kitchen smells of baking powder, ripe fruit and cinnamon, scents that remind me of my youth as a mother and wife. But what makes me love blueberries is not just their delicious taste or convenience. It's because I know, in those tiny fruits lies a quiet power. Blueberries contain anthocyanin, a powerful antioxidant that has been studied to help reduce inflammation, lower liver enzymes, and protect liver cells from oxidative damage. As we age, our bodies are prone to smoldering inflammation, a silent enemy that few people notice. Blueberries act as a natural shield, protecting our liver, heart, and even our memory. I always have a bowl of cold blueberries in the fridge to treat my relatives when they visit. My grandchildren love them with vanilla ice cream. My daughter-in-law sprinkles them on her morning oatmeal. My friend Patrick, who is recovering from liver disease, asks me for seeds to plant. To me, each blueberry is not just food, but a gentle greeting, a gesture of care, and sometimes a way to say I love you without saying it. And then I thought, health is like those blueberries. If we take the time to take care of them every day, even if it's just a small thing, like picking a few ripe ones, washing them, mixing them with yogurt, then at some point, when we look back, we will see a whole garden of life. Green, full, and sweet, no less than a gift from nature. Life, after all, is simple things repeated with love and patience. Like the way I still take care of the blueberry tree in the backyard. The way I learned to take care of myself, every meal, every smoothie, every little joy, to keep my liver, heart, and soul pure. If you've made it this far, I want to say thank you. I know that the journey to health, especially as we age, is not easy. But with patience, from a bowl of oatmeal, a cup of green tea to a slice of avocado, or a handful of blueberries, little by little, your liver will thank you. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe so I can continue to share heartfelt stories like this. Don't forget to leave a comment about your own journey or share the video with your loved ones, especially if they are also dealing with fatty liver or need a natural boost. Wishing you good health, a clean liver, and a light heart.